The courtroom was heavy with tension, the air thick with the weight of a decision that could change a child's life forever. 8-year-old Lily sat on the witness stand, her small hands gripping the edge of the chair, her legs dangling just above the floor. She looked tiny in the massive, imposing room, surrounded by adults who spoke in voices too loud, too sharp, too filled with words she barely understood. Beside her, lying calmly at her feet, was Max, her German Shepherd service dog. His amber eyes tracked every movement, his ears flicking at every raised voice. He wasn't just a pet, he was her protector, her safe place in an unsafe world. Lily stole a glance toward the defense table. The man sitting there, the one who used to be the center of her world, was staring at her with a look that made her stomach twist into knots. Her father. The person she was supposed to trust, yet the one she feared the most. She turned her gaze back to the prosecutor, a kind-looking woman with short brown hair and a gentle voice. But no matter how softly she spoke, the questions were getting harder. "Lily, do you remember the night in question?" Lily's fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. She did. Every detail. But saying it out loud was different. Her father's lawyer had already said she was confused. That she was too young to understand. That she was making it up. "Sweetheart, you're safe here," the woman continued. "Can you tell us what happened that night?" Lily felt the familiar panic creeping in, tightening her throat. She could feel the eyes on her, the judge, the jury, the strangers in the gallery. But worst of all, she could feel his eyes. Her father's lawyer stood up. "Objection, Your Honor." Leading the witness. The judge, a stern-looking man with graying hair, sighed. "Sustained." "Please rephrase." The prosecutor nodded. "Lily, did something happen that made you afraid?" Lily's hands were shaking now. She couldn't do this. She couldn't say it. Her father's lawyer smirked slightly, like he already knew she wouldn't. Then, without thinking, Lily raised 2 fingers. It was so small, so subtle, that most people wouldn't have noticed. But Max noticed. Immediately, the dog's body stiffened. His ears snapped forward, his muscles coiling like a spring ready to launch. He let out a low, warning growl. A few heads turned. The prosecutor hesitated. Lily's father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then, Max let out a single, sharp bark. The sound echoed through the silent courtroom. Gasps rippled through the spectators. The bailiff took an instinctive step forward. The judge's eyebrows shot up. He glanced between Lily, Max, and the attorneys before holding up a hand. "Hold on," the judge said, his deep voice cutting through the confusion. "What just happened?" Lily swallowed hard, her fingers still raised. Max wasn't growling anymore, but his body remained rigid, his eyes locked on her father. He wasn't looking away. The defense lawyer stood, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, this is obviously just an animal reacting to the stress in the room. It's completely irrelevant." The judge frowned. "That didn't seem like a random reaction to me." He turned to Lily. "Miss Harper, what did you just do?" Lily hesitated, her heart pounding. She looked down at Max. He was waiting. The room was waiting. Everyone was looking at her, except for her father. He was looking at the exit. Max let out another low growl. The judge's voice was firm. "Miss Harper, did you just signal your dog?" Lily inhaled shakily and nodded. The courtroom fell silent. The judge leaned forward. "What does that signal mean?" Lily gripped the edges of her seat, her knuckles white. She took a deep breath, looked straight at the judge, and finally whispered. "It means I'm not safe." The courtroom remained eerily silent after Lily's whispered words. "It means I'm not safe." Max remained tense beside her, his eyes locked on the man sitting at the defense table. His low growl vibrated through the room, sending chills down the spines of everyone present. The judge cleared his throat, glancing between the young girl, the dog, and the attorneys. "I need an explanation. Now." Lily's attorney, Ms. Carter, a tall woman with a calm yet firm presence, stood. Your Honor, Max is not just a pet. He is a fully trained service dog, assigned to Lily specifically for protection and emotional support. That signal she just gave him, it wasn't random. The defense attorney scoffed. Your Honor, this is absurd. A dog's reaction doesn't count as evidence. Ms. Carter didn't back down. That depends on what he was trained to do. She turned to Lily, her voice gentle. Lily, would you like me to explain, or would you like to tell the judge yourself? Lily looked down at Max, still gripping the armrests of her chair. Slowly, she nodded. You can explain. Ms. Carter faced the judge. Your Honor, Max was trained to recognize distress signals in children who have suffered trauma. Lily was given a set of hand signals to communicate when she felt unsafe, scared, or forced to say something that wasn't true. The judge raised an eyebrow. And what exactly did her signal mean? Ms. Carter glanced at Lily for confirmation, then looked back at the judge. That she feels unsafe. And that she may not be able to speak freely. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The defense attorney's expression darkened. This is purely emotional manipulation. A trained response from an animal doesn't prove anything. The judge leaned forward, studying Max. The dog still hadn't taken his eyes off the defendant. Mr. Jennings, the judge addressed the defense attorney, if this was a mere coincidence, I'd like to confirm that. He turned to the bailiff. We have surveillance footage from the courtroom, correct? Yes, Your Honor, the bailiff responded. Pull up all recorded footage of this trial, every day that Miss Harper and her dog have been present. A tense silence filled the room as the bailiff retrieved the files. The defense attorney shook his head. Your Honor, this is unnecessary. I'll be the judge of that, he responded sternly. The large screen at the side of the courtroom flickered to life. The footage began playing. Day 1 of the trial, Lily and Max walked into the courtroom. As soon as they got near her father's side of the room, Max's ears flattened, and his posture stiffened. Day 2, Lily sat near the defense table for questioning. The moment her father spoke, Max's tail dropped, and he leaned against Lily, pressing his body to hers. Day 3, her father passed by her on the way to his seat. Max immediately stepped between them, his body tense, his head low, watching. Every single time Lily had been near her father, Max reacted. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. The prosecution exchanged knowing glances. The judge rubbed his chin. Ms. Carter turned to the defense attorney. Still think it's a coincidence? The defendant, Lily's father, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. This doesn't prove anything, the defense attorney insisted. Dogs pick up on anxiety. Maybe the child is nervous about being in court. It doesn't mean anything criminal occurred. The judge was quiet for a long moment before turning back to Ms. Carter. You mentioned Max was specifically trained for this type of work. Can you provide an expert witness? Ms. Carter nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The director of the service dog program that trained Max is here today. I'd like to call Dr. Evelyn Mitchell to the stand. A woman in her late 40s, dressed in professional attire, made her way to the witness stand. She had an air of quiet authority, the kind that came with years of experience. After being sworn in, Ms. Carter approached her. Dr. Mitchell, can you explain the kind of training service dogs like Max undergo? Dr. Mitchell nodded. Of course. Service dogs trained for child protection are conditioned to detect distress, fear, and even deception. They observe subtle body language cues, changes in heart rate, breathing patterns, and muscle tension. Max has been trained to recognize when Lily feels threatened or unsafe. The judge leaned forward. And how exactly does he respond? When she gives a silent distress signal, he is trained to react immediately, to bark, growl, or position himself between her and the perceived threat. The defense attorney stood. Are you seriously suggesting that a dog can tell if someone is lying? Dr. Mitchell remained calm. Not in the way humans do. But dogs are highly skilled at detecting changes in behavior. They can sense hesitation, fear, and even stress-induced chemical changes in our bodies. In cases like Lily's, Max has been trained to identify when she feels forced to say something against her will. The defense attorney crossed his arms. So, what? Every time this dog barks, we're supposed to assume the defendant is guilty? Dr. Mitchell turned to the judge. Not at all. But when the dog consistently reacts to the same person, in the same way, across multiple instances, it becomes a pattern. And patterns are worth investigating. The judge tapped his fingers on the desk. Dr. Mitchell, in your professional opinion, do you believe Max was reacting to something specific in this case? Dr. Mitchell glanced at Lily, then at Max, who was still staring at her father. Yes, Your Honor. I believe Max has detected fear and distress from Lily every time she has been near her father. And I believe Lily is trying to tell us something, through him. A heavy silence filled the room. Lily's father suddenly shifted in his chair. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently. The judge turned back to Lily. Miss Harper, is there something you'd like to say? Lily hesitated, gripping the armrest of her chair. Max nudged her hand gently, grounding her. She looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. I was never lying. The courtroom remained silent as Lily's last words echoed through the large chamber. I was never lying. Max, her loyal German shepherd, sat alert beside her, his unwavering gaze fixed on the man at the defense table. The tension in the room was suffocating. The judge folded his hands on the bench, glancing at Lily's father, then back at Ms. Carter. The defense lawyer, Mr. Jennings, cleared his throat and stood. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness behind it. Your Honor, this is nothing more than an emotionally charged spectacle. A dog barking in a courtroom doesn't prove guilt. The child is nervous, she's been coached, and the presence of this animal is clearly influencing her behavior. Ms. Carter stood as well. Or perhaps, Mr. Jennings, the truth is finally coming to light. Jennings smirked. The truth? You expect the court to base a decision on the instincts of a dog? He turned to the jury, pacing slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a step back for a moment. This case should be about facts, not theatrics. A young girl's nervousness in court is understandable, but that does not automatically mean that my client is guilty of wrongdoing. Ms. Carter remained composed. And yet, every time Lily has been near him, Max has reacted the same way. She gestured toward the large screen where security footage had been played earlier. You've seen the footage. Every single time Lily approached her father, Max positioned himself between them. Every time she was forced to interact with him, Max stiffened, growled, or barked. Jennings rolled his eyes. That's just confirmation bias. You're interpreting it however you want. Ms. Carter turned back to Lily. Lily, would you like to explain in your own words how Max was trained to help you? Lily hesitated for only a moment before she straightened in her chair. Her small hands curled into fists on her lap, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Max knows when I'm scared, she said softly. I didn't even have to teach him at first. He just knew. The room was completely still. She glanced at Max, who gave a soft whine as if encouraging her to keep going. But then my counselor helped me train him, she continued. She told me that if I was ever in danger but I couldn't say it out loud, I could use signals. That's why I raised my fingers. It means, I need help, but I can't say it. Jennings exhaled, clearly annoyed. With all due respect, Your Honor, this is nothing but a child's misunderstanding of a situation. He turned to Lily, his tone condescending. Lily, sweetie, isn't it possible that Max is just reacting because you're nervous? Maybe you've been told to be afraid of your father, and Max is just picking up on that? Lily's eyes darkened. She stared at him for a long moment before speaking. No, she said simply. Max knows the difference. Jennings scoffed. And how exactly would he know that? Lily looked directly at her father for the first time since the trial had begun. Because Max was there. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Jennings hesitated, glancing at his client. Lily's father was gripping the edge of the table, his face pale. Ms. Carter seized the moment. "Lily, what do you mean by that? When was Max there?" Lily swallowed hard but kept her gaze steady. "The night it happened." The judge leaned forward. "Miss Harper, are you saying Max was present during the alleged incident?" Lily nodded. "He was in my room. He barked and growled, just like he did today. But nobody listened to him." The whispers in the courtroom grew louder. The judge raised a hand for silence. "Ms. Carter, do you have any additional evidence to support this claim?" Ms. Carter turned to her assistant, who quickly handed her a file. She walked to the bench and set it down. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit additional evidence, records that were previously overlooked or dismissed." Jennings immediately objected. "Objection. We've already reviewed all the evidence." The judge frowned. "I'll determine that." He opened the file and scanned the contents. His expression shifted slightly. "Your Honor?" Jennings prompted impatiently. The judge looked up, his gaze sharp. "Ms. Carter, this is a police report from 6 months ago. Why was this not included earlier?" Ms. Carter's voice was firm. "Because it was dismissed at the time as an unsubstantiated domestic dispute. But after reviewing Lily's testimony and Max's behavior, I believe this report is critical to understanding the full story." The judge flipped through the pages, reading aloud. Police were called to the Harper residence after neighbors reported hearing loud shouting and a dog barking aggressively. Upon arrival, officers noted a strong presence of alcohol on Mr. Harper and a minor child appearing distressed. No charges were filed at the time due to lack of evidence. The judge lifted his eyes. "This child was Lily." Ms. Carter nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "And the dog barking aggressively?" "That was Max." Jennings was losing patience. "This doesn't prove anything. A barking dog means nothing." Ms. Carter was already reaching for another piece of evidence. "Then let's move on to this, a recorded conversation between Lily and her school counselor." Jennings slammed his hands on the table. "Your Honor." The judge held up a hand. "Quiet." The courtroom fell silent again as Ms. Carter pressed play. A crackling audio recording played through the speakers. Lily's small voice could be heard, hesitant but clear. "He said if I told anyone, I'd get taken away. He said no one would believe me." There was a pause, then another voice, her counselor's. "Lily, do you feel safe at home?" A long silence. Then, a shaky whisper. "Not when he's there." A chill ran through the room. The judge turned to Jennings. "Do you still maintain that this is just a coincidence?" Jennings stammered. "Your Honor, But his client, Lily's father, wasn't listening. His face was red, his fists clenched. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead. He suddenly turned toward Lily, opening his mouth. Max let out a deep, menacing growl. A bailiff stepped forward immediately, placing a firm hand on the defendant's shoulder. "Sir, I suggest you stay seated." Lily didn't flinch. For the first time, she sat up straighter. She wasn't afraid anymore. The judge took a deep breath and looked toward the jury. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air. The jury members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting. Max had seen the truth before anyone else. But now, so did they. The judge took a deep breath, his expression unreadable as he closed the case file in front of him. The weight of the new evidence was clear. He looked toward the courtroom, scanning the tense faces of the attorneys, the jury, and most of all, Lily. She sat stiffly in her chair, her small hands gripping Max's fur. The German shepherd remained still, his deep brown eyes locked on the man at the defense table. Lily's father sat rigid, his jaw clenched, sweat forming at his temple. The judge adjusted his glasses. Given the new evidence presented, including the recorded conversation, the prior police report, and the service dog's consistent behavioral responses, I am calling a recess to review these findings further. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Ms. Carter leaned toward Lily, whispering, "This is a good thing. It means the judge is taking this seriously." Lily nodded but didn't say a word. She only held on to Max a little tighter. The judge rapped his gavel. "We will reconvene in 1 hour." With that, he stood and exited the chamber. The jury followed, murmuring amongst themselves as they disappeared into the deliberation room. As soon as the doors closed, the tension broke. Lily's father turned to his lawyer, whispering furiously. Jennings' face was tight with frustration, shaking his head as he muttered something back. Ms. Carter gave Lily's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Let's step outside, sweetheart." Lily didn't need to be told twice. She followed Ms. Carter, gripping Max's leash as they left the courtroom. Outside in the hallway, reporters had already gathered, murmuring about what had just unfolded inside. Cameras flashed, microphones were raised. "Ms. Carter, do you believe the judge will rule in your favor? Is there enough evidence to convict?" "Lily, how do you feel about what happened today?" Max let out a low growl, and Ms. Carter immediately raised a hand. "No comments at this time. Please respect Lily's privacy." Security stepped in, blocking the media as they made their way to a private waiting room. Lily finally let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. She looked down at Max, who wagged his tail slightly before nudging her hand. She smiled faintly, rubbing behind his ears. "You're really brave," Ms. Carter said softly. Lily met her gaze. "I don't feel brave." Ms. Carter knelt so they were eye level. "Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing up even when you are." Lily looked down. Max was the brave one. Ms. Carter smiled. "He was. But so were you." The hour passed slowly. Lily didn't speak much, just sat curled up in the chair with Max resting beside her. Every so often, she'd stroke his fur absent-mindedly, her fingers finding comfort in the familiar warmth. Finally, a bailiff stepped in. "The judge is ready." Lily's stomach twisted. Ms. Carter gave her hand a squeeze. "Come on. It's time." They returned to the courtroom, where everyone had settled back into their seats. The judge sat at the bench, his expression unreadable as he glanced at the papers in front of him. Lily's father sat stiffly at the defense table, his fingers gripping the edge of the desk. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something urgently, but he barely responded. The judge cleared his throat. The room fell silent. "I have reviewed all the evidence presented in this case," he began, his voice steady and firm. "Given the testimonies, the prior police report, the expert analysis of the service dog's behavioral responses, and the newly submitted recording, I have made my decision." Lily barely breathed. The judge turned to her father. "Mr. Harper, it is clear that there are significant concerns regarding your behavior and its impact on your daughter's well-being. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the prosecution. Effective immediately, you are to have no custody or unsupervised visitation rights to Lily Harper." The courtroom erupted. Gasps filled the space. Reporters scribbled furiously, some rushing out to deliver the breaking news. Lily's father shot up from his chair. "This is insane. She's my daughter." The bailiff immediately stepped forward, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Sir, you need to remain seated." Jennings, his lawyer, looked defeated. "Your Honor, we request an appeal." The judge cut him off. "An investigation will be launched into past reports of domestic incidents involving Mr. Harper. Given the evidence presented, I believe further inquiry is necessary. Until then, any attempts to contact Lily will be considered a violation of court order." Ms. Carter exhaled in relief. Lily's father's face twisted in anger. "This is a setup. A dog can't be used as a witness. This is ridiculous." Max's ears flattened. A deep growl rumbled from his chest. The judge's gaze hardened. Mr. Harper, I suggest you stop talking before you make things worse for yourself. Security stepped forward as Mr. Harper's face turned red with fury. He gritted his teeth but didn't speak. Lily's heart pounded. She clutched Max's fur, bracing herself for what would happen next. The judge looked down at her. His expression softened slightly. Miss Harper, I know this has been difficult. But today, you showed remarkable courage. And I want you to know, you are safe now. For the first time in a long time, Lily believed it. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing. Max licked her hand, sensing the shift in her emotions. Ms. Carter leaned down and whispered, "It's over." Lily looked up at her. "Really?" Ms. Carter smiled. "Really?" Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. She turned to Max, wrapping her arms around his neck, pressing her face into his fur. For the first time since the trial began, she smiled. The judge's gavel came down. Case closed. The courtroom buzzed with noise again, but none of it mattered anymore. Lily didn't hear the reporters, the lawyers, or the commotion of her father being led away. She only felt Max beside her. He had protected her when no one else could. And now, thanks to him, she finally had a chance at a new life. The news spread like wildfire. Hero dog saves little girl in court. TV networks, online headlines, and newspapers covered the remarkable case of how a young girl's service dog helped uncover the truth in a courtroom. Footage of Max's protective stance, his unwavering focus on Lily's father, and his instinctive reaction to her silent signal played on screens across the country. People everywhere were in awe. But for Lily, the most important thing wasn't the attention or the headlines. It was that she was safe. For the first time in years, she didn't wake up afraid. Her new home was small but cozy. It wasn't filled with expensive furniture or big rooms, but it had something far more valuable: peace. She had her own bed, her own books, and her own quiet corner where she could finally breathe. And most importantly, she had Max. He followed her everywhere, just like always, sleeping at the foot of her bed, waiting outside the bathroom door, watching over her when she played in the yard. Every time she looked at him, she felt a deep warmth in her chest. He had never left her side. And he never would. One evening, Ms. Carter came to visit. She sat on the couch with a proud smile. "I have some news for you, Lily." Lily sat up straight. "What is it?" Ms. Carter handed her a newspaper. Lily's eyes widened as she read the headline. "New law protects children in court, service dogs to be allowed for vulnerable witnesses." She blinked up at Ms. Carter. "They're really letting kids have dogs like Max in court now?" Ms. Carter nodded. "Your case changed things. People saw what Max did for you. And now, other children who need protection will be allowed to have their service dogs with them, too." Lily looked down at Max, who was resting his head on her lap. She ran her fingers through his fur. "He helped me," she whispered. "Now he'll help other kids, too." Ms. Carter's eyes softened. "Yes. And you helped make that happen." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had always felt small, powerless. But now, she knew her story mattered. And so did Max's. That night, as she climbed into bed, Max curled up beside her. She hugged him tightly, resting her forehead against his. "You saved me," she whispered. His tail thumped softly, his deep brown eyes full of understanding. Lily smiled. "Not all heroes wear capes, you know." Max let out a small, happy sigh, as if he agreed. She closed her eyes, feeling safe, loved, and finally home. Final message. Sometimes, the truth is silent, until a hero speaks for us. Not all heroes wear capes, some have 4 paws and endless loyalty.